Okay, so as I shared with you earlier, in 2008, my wife and I moved to Philadelphia to plant a church, which is to start a church from scratch. I got saved in 1995. I, at that point, had been a Christian for 13 years. I wouldn't say I grew up in the church. I got saved in high school, but I kind of had church experience in high school. I went to Nyack College when it existed. And then Matt York went and it closed. No relation. Went to Nyack College, went to Alliance Theological Seminary, and had served at a church in New York for a couple years before moving to Philadelphia. For me, church planting was a real world experiment in what is a church, or the big word would be ecclesiology, the study of a church. I knew what an elder was. An elder's an old man. I knew what that was. But then when we planted a church, I was like, wait, I think there's more to it. And I had to actually figure out, what are elders supposed to do? What are the qualifications? What's an elder? I knew what baptism was. It's like when you push people under the water. But then we had to start studying. I had to restudy baptism, communion, church governance, outreach, evangelism, discipleship. All of a sudden, all of these things came crashing at me in a very real, practical way, because this was the first time in my life I wasn't stepping into a pre-existing structure. You know what I'm saying? When you show up at a church, there's already a structure there, and unless you're going to go blow everything up, you're kind of stepping into the momentum that's already been established. But when you're planting a church, there is no momentum. You have to establish the momentum. Well, one of the things that I really had to dig into was the idea of worship. Up to that point in my life, my pastoral experience with worship was how big should the team be? How many songs should we sing on a Sunday? How many minutes should a worship set go? Should we use hymns or choruses, hymnals or a projector? This was as deep as I had gone when it came to thinking about worship in the life of a local church. It was all practical stuff. It was all stuff that people, for some reason, like to argue over. And there was no one to argue with at the time, thank God. But I really had to think about, so what is worship? I'll tell you a story it's kind of embarrassing. But when we finally got the church up and running and launched the church, 2 weeks after the church launched, our worship leader resigned and said that they were leaving the church. I was like, this is horrible timing. We just started public services, and the same day that he resigned, or told me that he resigned, we had a visitor at church, a young Haitian woman who had just moved to Philly, and she was previously had been part of the Brooklyn Gospel Tabernacle Choir. And it was her first day at church, and our worship leader resigned. Now, if this happened now, I would have said, what's your name? Can I hear your testimony? Would you like to go through our membership class? Dude, she was leading worship 2 weeks later. She was our worship leader 2 weeks later. Thank goodness she was a godly young lady, because that could have been horrible. That could have, but I'm telling you that because I did not have a fully developed theology of worship. For me, worship was just practical stuff. Get the right people in the right place, sing the right amount of songs for the right amount of minutes, coordinate the songs with the sermon, and get the right genre for the crowd, and get the right musicians and instruments. And that was how I thought about worship. As I've looked into God's Word and what it says about worship, it's much bigger and deeper than that. It's really not about music and instruments and genres and time and verse, chorus, bridge, or any of that. It's really, I'm finding, it is about bringing what is happening in God's throne room, to earth. So we're going to start this morning by studying God's throne room, and we're going to look at 3 passages in the Bible that are very weird, just to be honest. Very strange passages that refer to God's throne room and what's taking place in God's throne room. And we're going to look at three individuals in the Bible that saw God's throne room and reported it to us, and they are Isaiah, Ezekiel, and John. Isaiah, Ezekiel, and John. And when we get to the writing of John, it'll actually be from the book of Revelation. When I read these passages, I read them as real events that took place in the lives of real people who are really reporting under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit what they experienced and what they saw. And even though there's about an 800-year gap that covers these three experiences, the amount of continuity is really interesting. Now, I think they're incredibly, there's a lot of continuity here, but let me just illustrate when we look at this, like, they're going to describe very similar situations, but they still might use different terms, and they might look at things from different perspectives. So, for instance, if you drove through my hometown of Sagertown, Pennsylvania, if you drove through Sagertown and you came from the south, you would see, the first thing you would see is H&H Supermarket, and then you would go past a bridge, and then you would get to the ice cream shop, and then you'd go through a traffic circle, and then you'd go out past the lumber yard. Now, if someone was coming from the north going south, they would describe the exact same place, but in a different way. Instead of a traffic circle, they might say, well, you enter the roundabout. Okay, they're using a different term, but aren't they describing the same thing? And they might say, well, I get to the lumber yard, and then I'm going to see a bridge, and there's going to be an ice cream shop, and as I exit town, I'm going to go past a grocery store. They're not saying the same thing I'm saying, but aren't they, though? Really? They're just describing it from a different perspective. They went through it in a different order. They might use different terms, but if you look at the big picture, they're really describing the same thing. Okay, let's get into Isaiah chapter 6. I have this on the screen. Maybe tomorrow I'll use white font instead of black font. But I think if you have a good Bible, it's in Isaiah chapter 6. Isaiah 6 should be in it. Okay? Did anyone here go to Toccoa Falls College? Could we help them find Isaiah 6 real quick? It's in toward kind of the front part. None of you will like me by the end of this week. Okay. This is the New American Standard Bible on the screen, so that's what I'm going to be using this week. You're probably going to be using different translations. So let me read Isaiah chapter 6. As I'm reading this, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. As I'm reading this, just note some observations, and I'm going to ask you, what do you see? What do you see in this passage? Okay. In the year of King Uzziah's death, which is 740 BC, in the year of King Uzziah's death, I saw the Lord sitting on the throne, lofty and exalted, with the train of his robe filling the temple. Seraphim were standing above him, each having 6 wings. With 2 each covered his face, and with 2 each covered his feet, and with 2 each flew. And one called out to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of armies. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the foundations of the thresholds trembled at the voice of him who called out, while the temple was filling with smoke. Then I said, Woe to me, for I am ruined, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of armies. Then one of the seraphim flew to me with a burning coal in his hand, which he had taken from the altar with tongs. He touched my mouth with it and said, Behold, this has touched your lips, and your guilt is taken away, and atonement is made for your sin. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then I said, Here am I, send me. As we go through Isaiah 6, what stands out to you? What do you observe? What do you see in this story? Give me some, shout it out what you see. Who do you think's sitting on that throne? Jesus, I heard over here. Yep. I mean, it says the Lord, right? So the Lord is sitting on the throne. And is there any, I don't know, do you notice anyone else present or anything else present in the throne room? What did you say? Cherubim. Okay. Now, real quick, I have a question. Does it say seraphim or cherubim? Your translation may say... Seraphim. Okay. Well, I'm really glad you brought that up, because this will allow me to go on a 45-minute tangent. Actually, let me hold off on that for a minute. But there are these seraphim. I'm going to call them spiritual beings for the time being, okay? What else do you see?
Train of the robe.
Yeah, the train of the robe. And what's it doing?
It's filling a temple.
Filling a temple, yep. What else? Do you hear anything, or is anything being said? Yeah, they're crying out, or does it say they're crying out or saying, holy, holy, holy? They call out to one another. What's Isaiah's experience like? See, the temple's full of smoke, okay? It shakes, yep. What's Isaiah's experience like? Yeah, what's that mean, you think? Like burning away. I think I heard the word disintegrating. Yeah. And did someone say losing his mind? I mean, yeah. He's having a meltdown, but a good meltdown, maybe a breakthrough, you might call that. Why? What's causing that? Is it stress? Is it anxiety? What is it that's happening to Isaiah that's causing him to react this way?
It's perfection. It's in the presence of perfection.
Yeah, he's in the presence of the Lord, and what you and I have to access by faith, he's accessing by sight. You know, you and I almost in a sense are protected from something like this because we can't see the spiritual world that's around us, even though it is around us. When the Lord allows us, we can see it, but usually we go about operating by faith. Okay, so I want to go through this kind of verse by verse quickly and just point a few things out. So you might know this already, but in the Old Testament, they don't tell you what year it is because they didn't know how we were going to count years once we got the Gregorian calendar. So they'll date things by like in the third year of this king or in the year this king died. So in the year that King Uzziah died, which we call 740 BC, that's going to matter in a moment. 740 BC. Isaiah has this experience. Isaiah is a prophet, right? We all know that about Isaiah. He's a prophet. He sees God sitting on a throne. It's this majestic experience. And God is not alone. He's accompanied by seraphim. And each seraphim, it's important that we get this description right, has how many wings? 6 wings. Just remember that. Like, store that away in your head. Each one has 6 wings. With 2 they cover their face, with 2 they cover their feet, with 2 they fly. Okay. Here's a little bit of Bible trivia. You might find this helpful. It's been helpful to me. The Bible has a really nuanced and layered view of the spiritual world and spiritual beings. You and I probably think like there's God and there's angels, and if you're really charismatic, you believe in demons. And that might be as detailed as you get. You probably, if you're really spiritual, you might say, I have a spirit. I would probably say you don't have a spirit, you are a spirit. You have a body. Your spirit is longer lasting than your body is. You are primarily a spiritual being having a temporary physical experience, Ron Walborn used to teach us, and you may have heard him say. So you are a spiritual being. There's these different terms in the Bible that refer to different spiritual beings. One of them is seraphim, which I'll explain in a moment. So, do you remember in Genesis chapter 3, after Adam and Eve were removed from the garden, God set someone on post to guard the garden and prevent Adam and Eve from entering? Do you remember what God put there? Oh, this is where this gets interesting. Okay, the word is cherubim. God puts a cherubim there. Cherubims in the Bible, I'm just getting really technical and really nerdy, but like I said, we're on steroids right now. So, and a lot of other chemicals and stuff. So, a cherubim is someone that guard. It's like a spiritual being, but they're on guard. We'll get to this in a few days, but it says in Psalm 99 and later in Isaiah 37 that God is enthroned above the cherubim. And the Ark of the Covenant has a little lid that has cherubim. Okay, so there's cherubim, there's seraphim, there's shadim, and there's a shadim is a demon. That's the Hebrew Old Testament word for demon. So is shadim the same as cherubim? No. There's also Elohim. Elohim is not God's name. Elohim is God's category. Okay, so here's what I mean by that. How many of you are moms? Raise your hand if you're a mom. Okay, see how there's multiple moms in the room? Let me just take a stab. I'm in southern Pennsylvania. What county is this? York County. I bet there's a Susan in the room. Is there a Susan in the room? Okay, boom, nailed it. Mom is a category. Susan is a name referring to a specific. Are you a mom, Susan? York County, baby, coming through. I could just fling a dart. I'm going to hit a mom named Susan somewhere. Mom is a category. Susan is a name. In the Bible, Elohim is a category. Yahweh is a name. Does that make sense? Elohim just means spiritual being. And the word Elohim is used to refer to God, but is also used to refer to that spiritual being that when Saul goes and gets the witch of Endor, Saul goes to the witch of Endor and says, conjure up for me Samuel. And the witch says, I see an Elohim. Well, that's not God, but it's a spiritual being. Psalm 82 talks about Elohim, spiritual beings that exist, but they're not Yahweh. So, now seraphim, this is interesting to me, I hope I'm not boring you. Seraphim, the word means fiery serpent.
Whoa.
Yeah, burning one. So, in this passage, God is surrounded by spiritual beings, but the word that's used is a fiery serpent. Now, I bet when you hear serpent, you're immediately thinking, are these bad? They're not bad. I know we always associate serpents with evil in the Bible, but that's not always the case. It's often the case, but it's not always the case. So what we're seeing here is that there are these spiritual beings called seraphim. The word means a fiery serpent, a burning one, surrounding God's throne. I don't think that they are taking on the form that Satan took. I think it's possible Satan was a seraphim, and that's why he's exposed or manifests as a serpent in the Bible, either a snake in the Old Testament or a dragon, which is just a Dragon Ball Z level snake. Does that make sense? You follow? We're going to have questions at the end because I can tell there's going to be some. So God's surrounded by these seraphim, and really quickly for the sake of time, Isaiah has this response. He sees this and he's like, I'm dead. And one of the seraphim takes a coal and touches his mouth and says, your sin is atoned for. This is almost like a conversion experience for Isaiah. It's foreshadowing our atonement in Jesus. And then God says, who will go for us? Notice God speaks in the plural there. Remember that? I mean, if he's a Trinitarian God, then that makes sense, right? Who will go for us? And Isaiah says, well, go where? Like, is this a tropical mission field, or what are we talking about? Isaiah doesn't ask where he's going, because Isaiah is not responding to a specific call to a mission field. Isaiah is like, I'll just go because it's you. He's responding to God. And this takes Isaiah from being not just a prophet to also essentially missionary. Now there is another category of spiritual being, angel. Cherubim is not the same as seraphim, is not the same as shadim, is not the same as angel. They're different categories of things. We might get more into that this week. I don't know. If you hang out with those things, let me know. I would love to talk. We may have to get you some medicine, but also, I do think that people have spiritual encounters. We're reading about them this week. So, all right, let me go to Ezekiel. So this one's going to take a while. This is all of Ezekiel chapter 1. And actually, Matt, if you could advance the slides so I don't have to worry about that while I'm reading Ezekiel chapter 1, that would be awesome. Give me a second to get my Bible here. I can tell already that this is going to be a spicy week. Okay. Ezekiel 1, I'm going to read all 28 verses. In fact, I may stop and we'll pause and do this, kind of comb through this. Ezekiel's writing, it says, "It came about in the 30th year, on the 5th day of the 4th month, while I was by the Kibar among the exiles, the heavens were open and I saw visions of God. On the 5th of the month, in the 5th year of King Jehoiachin's reign," so we know that this is 593 BC, "the word of the Lord came expressly to Ezekiel the priest, son of Buzi, in the land of the Chaldeans by the river Kibar, and there the hand of the Lord came upon him." So Ezekiel, kind of having a similar experience to Isaiah, it begins in verse 4. "As I looked, behold, a high wind was coming from the north, a great cloud with fire flashing intermittently and a bright light around it. And in its midst, something like gleaming metal, and in the midst of the fire. Within it there were figures resembling 4 living beings." Okay, how many living beings? 4. Remember that. That's going to matter. "And this was their appearance. They had human form. Each of them had 4 faces and 4 wings. Their legs were straight, and their feet were like a calf's hoof, and they sparkled like polished bronze. Under their wings and on their 4 sides were human hands. As for the faces and wings of the 4 of them, their wings touched one another. Their faces did not turn away when they moved. Each went straight forward. As for the form of their faces, each had a human face. All 4 had the face of a lion on the right, and and the face of a bull on the left, and all 4 had the face of an eagle." Okay, what are the 4 faces again? There's the face of a human, a lion, a bull. Go birds, eagles. All right. "Such were their faces. Their wings were spread out above. Each had 2 touching another being and 2 covering their bodies. And each went straight forward wherever the Spirit was about to go. And they would go without turning as they went. In the midst of the living beings, there was something that looked like burning coals of fire." So I guess this is 2 stories in a row that there's coals. There's fire in heaven. "Like torches moving among the living beings, there was the fire was bright, and lightning was flashing from the fire. The living beings ran back and forth like bolts of lightning. Now as I looked at the living beings, behold, there was one wheel on the ground beside the living beings for each of the 4 of them." So they each have a wheel that corresponds to them. "The appearance of the wheels and their workmanship was like sparkling topaz, and all 4 of them had the same form. Their appearance and workmanship being as if one wheel were within another. Whenever they moved in any of the 4 directions without turning as they moved. As for their rims, they were high and awesome, and the rims were all 4 of them were covered with eyes all around." So, okay, these wheels are covered in what? Eyes. Okay, now why does that matter? Verse 19, "Whenever the living being moved, the wheels moved with them, and whenever the living beings arose from the earth, the wheels rose also. Wherever the Spirit was about to go, they would go in that direction, and the wheels rose just as they did, for the Spirit of the living being was in the wheels." So each of these living beings has a wheel that follows them around because their spirit is in the wheel. Yeah, good question. "Whenever those went, they went, and whenever those stopped, they stopped. And whenever those rose from the earth, the wheels rose just as they did, for the Spirit of the living beings was in the wheels." Take a deep breath. We're almost done. "Now over the heads of the living beings there was something like an expanse, like an awesome gleam of crystal spread out over their heads. Under the expanse their wings were stretched out, one toward the other. Each one also had 2 wings covering its body, and on the on the one side and on the other. And I also heard the sound of their wings, like the sound of abundant waters, and they went like the voice of the Almighty, a sound of a crowd, like the sound of an army camp. Whenever they stopped, they let down their wings, and a voice came from above the expanse and was over their heads. Whenever they stood still, they let down their wings. Now above the expanse was over their heads, there was something resembling a throne, like lapis lazuli in appearance, and on that which resembled a throne high up was a figure with the appearance of a man. Then I noticed from the appearance of his waist and upwards something like gleaming metal that looked like fire all around within it. And from the appearance of his waist and downward I saw something like fire, and there was a radiance around him, like the appearance of the rainbow in the clouds on a rainy day. So was the appearance of the surrounding radiance. Such was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. And when I saw it, I fell on my face and heard the Lord speaking. Okay. Real quick, we don't have a ton of time on this one. Did you see anything in Ezekiel 1 that sounded familiar from Isaiah 6? A throne, that's good. Anyone on the throne? There's a glorious person on the throne, right? Anything else?
Fire.
Fire?
Everywhere.
Say that again?
Fire everywhere.
Fire everywhere, yep. Which, if there's fire, there's also smoke, probably. What else?
Weird beings.
Weird beings? Is that what that's like the technical term. Weird beings. Yep. Wings, yep. And then we learned a little something new about these beings, like the eyes. They had wheels, and the wheels were covered with eyes, right? Okay. So there's also lots of precious metals and precious stones. And then I didn't read it, but if you read, then just go into chapter 2. It does say Ezekiel fell on his face. Did you get that? So what's Isaiah's response in Isaiah 6? It doesn't say he fell on his face, but what does he do? He's like, I'm dead. I'm undone. I'm fried. Okay, that's not the same thing, but it's not unlike what Ezekiel experiences, who falls on his face, right? And if I just read the first 2 verses of the next chapter, God says to Ezekiel, "Son of man, stand on your feet, and I'll speak with you." And he spoke to me. As he spoke to me, the Spirit entered me, and he set me on my feet, and I heard him speaking to me. And then Ezekiel gets sent. So just like Isaiah, now Ezekiel is sent. All right, let's go to Revelation chapter 4. This is the last passage we have today. Revelation is going to be in the back of your Bible, probably. I love Revelation chapter 4. If you don't have time to read Isaiah 6 and Ezekiel 1, just go to Revelation 4. It's going to summarize a lot of that. This is verses 1 through 11. Now, as I read this, listen for what's familiar. After these things I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven, and the first voice which I heard, like the sound of a trumpet speaking with me, said, "Come up here, and I'll show you what must take place after these things." Immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne, there we go, a throne was standing in heaven, and someone was sitting on the throne. He who was sitting was like jasper stone and a sardius in appearance, and there was a rainbow around the throne, like an emerald in appearance. Around the throne were 24 thrones. That's new. We haven't heard about that yet. Upon the thrones I saw 24 elders sitting, clothed in white garments and golden crowns on their heads. Out from the throne came flashes of lightning and sounds and peals of thunder. There were 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. And there before the throne, there was something like the sea of glass, like crystal. We've heard this before. Near the center and around the throne, four living creatures. We've heard this, full of eyes in front and behind. The first living creature was like a lion. The second like a calf. Do you think calf and bull might be referring to the same thing?
Maybe.
The third creature had the face of a man, and the fourth creature was like a flying eagle. So this is the same 4 faces that Ezekiel described. The 4 living creatures, each one of them having 6 wings. Oh, we've heard that before. And they were full of eyes around and within, and day and night they did not cease to say, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God the Almighty, who was and who is to come. So real quick, you go to Isaiah 740 BC. Do you remember what their song started with? Holy, holy, holy. 850 years later, they're still singing that song. If you think some hymns are long, and you think some worship choruses are the same words over and over and over, imagine singing holy, holy, holy for 850 years and saying, again, let's do it again. No one complained. Maybe they did. And that's where you get New Jersey. That's where the people who complain in heaven go. Kind of a purgatorial place. Verse 9, when the living creatures give glory, honor, and thanks to him who sits on the throne, to him who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders will fall down before him. Have we had people falling down? They fall down before him who sits on the throne, and they will worship him who lives forever and ever, and they will cast their crowns before the throne, saying, Worthy are you, our Lord and our God, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and because of your will they existed and were created. So, we've read Isaiah 6, we've read Ezekiel 1, we've read Revelation 4. 3 different people having 3 different experiences, but describing a strikingly similar place. What do you take away from God's throne room from reading these? Give me, tell me, what do you see? What's something you picked up that maybe you had not known or you're reminded of? There is a throne.
Great glory.
Sorry, say that again.
Great glory.
Great glory. Yep. Great glory. Is the throne occupied?
Absolutely.
There's a person on it, right? Which we know to be God. Is he alone? Well, who's accompanying him? Yeah. It starts with the spiritual beings or living creatures. It kind of use different terms, and I think they're talking about the same thing. But then, yes, in Revelation 4, we get these 24 elders. We had not heard about them before. I don't know if they are added during the church age or they've always been, but this is the first that we read of them. And what do the 24 elders do? They fall down and they cast their crowns to Jesus, right? To God on the throne. Okay, what are they singing? Holy, 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 right? Okay, so when I picture Revelation 4, it says that they're covered in eyes. Isn't that kind of strange? I mean, some people think that's creepy. I mean, it is creepy if you watch scary movies or if you're one of those people that likes to watch LASIK surgeries on YouTube. Yeah, get a life. They're covered in eyes. Why? I think their job is to just look at God and react. And they are covered with eyes. So you and I have 2 eyes, right? And if your eyes are working, with one eye you can see, you can read, you can operate with one eye, but with 2 eyes you have something called depth perception. Your sight's better with 2 eyes. Imagine being covered with eyes. Imagine what you could take in if you didn't have 2 eyes, but you were covered head to toe, front and back, up and down with eyes. Imagine the depth, the clarity, the detail, the colors, the shapes that you could see. Now take that supervision and then point it at God. No wonder they are freaking out. I really if your front was covered with eyes and you saw God, you would do what Isaiah did. You would do what Ezekiel did. You would cover your eyes and turn away. Oh no, but my back is covered with eyes. It's I And they see God and they're like, I can't help but say, based on what I'm seeing and the detail that I see with, and the depth that I can see with, I can't do anything but say, holy, holy, holy. And then the elders freak out, and they fall on the ground, and they throw their crowns, and it's like everybody's brain has to defrag and reset, and then they just do it again for all of eternity. And they look deeper, and they look further, and they learn more about God. That's what I think is happening here in Revelation chapter 4. So, here's my question for you. How do we get that on earth? How do we get what we're reading about in the throne room into our own lives, into our families, into our churches? How do we get an Isaiah, Ezekiel, John type experience, but also response on earth? And I think that is essentially the story of the tabernacle, the temple, and the church. It's how do we get the worship that's in heaven to take place on earth? Now, I'm just going to be very honest with you. Someone explained to me once, we had an intern, and she was very honest, and she was sharing something with me, and I had never thought about it this way. She came from a church that had like smoke machines and strobe lights, and I was kind of like making fun of that. And she said, well, the reason we do that is because it's to manufacture the atmosphere of heaven. And I thought, when she said that, I was like, I've never heard anyone say that. Now, I didn't change my mind. I still think that's all ridiculous. But I did learn something. I did learn something from that. Oh, your church made an effort to reproduce on earth what they saw in heaven. I don't think smoke machines really do that. I don't think strobe lights really do that. But I could appreciate the intent. I could appreciate the effort. Because a lot of churches have no concept of what heaven is like. And we don't start from heaven and build out. We start from a consumer model of church to please the people, and we build from there rather than what's God's throne like. I'm not going to buy a smoke machine. I'm not going to buy strobe lights. Here's what I'm thinking as a pastor of a church. If I want that on earth, probably need to focus on the throne. Probably need to sing some songs about the throne. Not every song needs to be about my feelings. Not every song needs to be confusing. I'm not saying even every song needs to be about the throne, because you can incorporate the Psalms and other things. But I think if we want the atmosphere and the environment of the throne room on earth, we probably ought to focus on the throne and the one that's on the throne. My favorite worship songs are the songs that are about God, sung to God. Like, holy, 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 worthy are you. I like songs that are about God, to God. I think that's what they're going to sing in heaven. I don't think in heaven we're going to sing like, just a few more weary days and then. No one's going to sing that in heaven. That is not going to make the set list. Because we're not going to be weary anymore, right? We're not going to sing about our depression and our anxiety. We're going to sing holy, holy, holy. And then I think also, if I want what's in heaven to happen here, I have to be okay with some expression. I'm not going to go around and tip people over and push them over. But if a person has to get on their knees because they're having an Isaiah type experience, we need to create an environment where that's not seen as weird. It's not forced. No one's making it happen. It's not required, but it is accepted. Where if a person decides in the middle of the church service not to flop around like a dead fish, but to get down and lay out before God, let's create environments where that's okay. You know what I'm saying? Let's create environments where it's okay to raise your hands, get on your knees, lay prostrate in reverence. I'm not talking about silliness here. It's almost like we've created environments where you could not be Isaiah. You could not be Ezekiel. You could not be John. That's for other churches. Do that at home. No wonder we're not experiencing the atmosphere and the environment of heaven in our gatherings sometimes, because we've kind of outlawed it.